Maine's highest court today heard the appeal of a Northfield man convicted of killing 3 people in Down East, Maine in February of 2020. Thomas Bonfanti was found guilty last year for shooting and killing 57-year-old Sean Curry, 49-year-old Jennifer Bryant Flynn, and 33-year-old Samuel Powers. He was also found guilty of attempted murder and aggravated assault for shooting Regina Long, who survived. His attorney argued today that after his client invoked his Fifth Amendment rights, any information obtained should have been suppressed. Bonfanti had taken 20 hydrocodone pills. He says he had asserted his right to remain silent, but the officer still questioned him. He eventually identified the victims. The state said law enforcement received 3 911 calls, one from Bonfanti's victim and another from someone who said Bonfanti came into a bar and shot several people. They say it was the officer's job to determine if there were victims who could be saved.
It would have been, as you said, it would have been a dereliction of duty for the officer not to try and determine how many people had been shot and who they were to find out if these people were still alive.
The biggest complication I see is that the law court sides with the state, and it ends there. I think the state does have somewhat of an argument that ultimately it was harmless error because it was such a significant amount of overwhelming evidence. But nonetheless, I mean, it's an important constitutional question, and I think that issue has to be addressed in some context. And I think here they would probably figure out how that comports with the state's argument.
The court will issue a ruling at a later date. Bonfanti was sentenced last summer to life in prison.